and that fear level from the powers that be, because they can sense it. They can probably taste it in the air whenever they're around these guys. But the minions are also going to be under pressure from their own internal structures and their personal relationship to the dollar, etc. No matter how wealthy they are, it's still going to be an impact on their lives as the rest of us become that much more in poverty and impoverished. And it'll create pressures on us. We'll become very raspy. Then the minions will start getting really worried because they're afraid that the raspy populace is going to take it out on the face people who they are. And so, it's a bad time to be a face person for the powers that be. And again, the minion class at the upper level, I am sure, has been promised safety in whatever hidey hole of is being offered to them. But I'm sure there's a level of anxiety because, they know how duplicitous and double-dealing their bosses are, and it occurs to them that they might be double-crossed as well, and so there's all these various conflicting things going on as they're losing power right and left. So they're also going to be really distracted, and they're going to make a lot of mistakes. In fact, they are making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, they might as well be like The Sopranos or something, right?
I've never seen it. I don't watch TV. So,
well, like in a mafia.
Yeah, I've been told what it is, and I have some idea of it, and I would agree it's probably very much like that.
They're always going to double-cross each other for when it serves them to do so.
Right.
Well, that's the way it's been throughout history, anyway. So.
Yeah.
But you also report about some things that you've gathered of prominent people coming up, the pairs and the women, etc., and that a lot of this will be broadcast through the internet, so that will still be functioning at least periodically then, correct? In some form. And also bear in mind that there's really two different kinds of levels to the internet. There's the whole official level where we're all plugged into backbones that are run by the telcos, and the telcos are essentially the sponsor of the internet. Then there's all the servers that everybody contributes to run the thing. But then before all of that, we had an effective internet system going on. And about the time that, and in fact I was part of it, I was working for an OSP, another service provider, telephone company, and we did billing and stuff for big phone companies. And about that time, this was in the early 80s, ARPA and DARPA, the Defense Department's big think tanks, released to the phone companies the whole internet structure. And they need not. They were using it for years before they made it commercially available. And the reason that they made it commercially available, or publicly available, however way you want to think about it, was because the powers that be were starting to get really upset with the homegrown version of the internet, which was all of these BBSs. And many people don't recognize this or didn't participate. But before the internet, you could dial up to a bulletin board system, which we would think of as a forum now, and you'd dial into it. And many of the forums were connected by continuous phone lines to each other, or if not by phone lines, by what we used to call sneakernet, where they would, download all the files onto what back then were floppy disks, put them in crates and mail them back and forth to each other to keep all the servers current. So there was this sort of handcrafted internet forming, and it had its own movement, it had its own, and it was growing leaps and bounds. It had its own ethos, and it felt a whole lot like what you and I would think of as like the independent part of the internet now, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of conspiracy boards and so on, and it functioned very well. And it was working so well that the powers that be put pressure on the military to say, we need to subsume this within our own stuff so that we can control it. And of course they can't control it because the whole meme there is liberation or freedom. But basically what they did was they thought they had an opportunity to co-opt us all into their system, and now they realize that it failed. Further, if you read some of the language from the Rockefellers and from Murdoch and a few of these other individuals at the top end, they are aware that they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They can't shut the internet down without bankrupting themselves and a lot of other individuals that are now based commercially on the internet, yet at the same time it's the internet that's causing everybody to wake up and is changing the social structure upon which they rely for their power and prestige. So, it's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah.
And we can resurrect the old bulletin board system
with very little trouble, really. In fact, it'll be easier because nowadays we can send CDs back and forth with much more information, and we know how it all works. We've seen it work on the Internet. So pretty soon there'd be a homegrown DNS, and someone would, provide a telephone backbone, and then off you go. So
I didn't know all of that. That is cool.
That's very cool. With that, we'll take another break. You're listening to Cliff on Beyond the Ordinary. We'll be back.
Beyond the Ordinary. Yeah, we do have Beyond the Ordinary guests, and this is really one. You're here with Cliff, halfpasthuman.com. Do remember, just go get those reports. They will absolutely fascinate you if you stay a little detached or really wish you could just go hide with your pies.
It doesn't do any good, though. That's the whole thing. Our philosophy is that, when I first moved up here into the Northwest, there was this old indigenous population of Swedish loggers, of which I worked with a number of them. And bear in mind, I was like probably 17 or so. And these guys were in their 60s, and so it spanned a couple generations there. But these guys had a saying, that Father Time lays out your life the moment you're born, and no amount of hiding in a hole is going to lengthen it a single day. So why bother, It's kind of like, okay, it makes sense, and it provides you with an easy philosophical approach to things. Yeah, it's bad, but we can laugh at it because it doesn't matter.
Right.
And then from our martial arts training, we know that your death is preordained by universe. And so to a certain extent, it's almost impossible for something to come and kill you before universe would allow that. And I've seen many examples of that and have suffered through a few of those myself where I did things that should have killed me, and I had to live through it because the universe didn't want me dead then. And so I'm quite convinced that's the case. And it does give an equanimity to the whole thing. No matter what I do, I'm going to die in the future on a particular day, so why worry about anything between now and then? And at the moment of the death, it's not as everybody figures, and yeah, it's going to hurt a little bit. But on the other side, it's like, no big deal. And
right.
in between now and then, it's a waste of energy to get all caught up in the fear component of that. That's really why we do our reports. And it's kind of a screwy way of looking at it, but our reports are a legitimate vaccine. they're a mental vaccine. You read the words there, and then it's like, hey, when they actually appear, they don't have that big of an impact on you.
And so you can say to the listeners what you wrote at the end of it, because that's where I was leading about courage, and courage does not mean violence.
No, it does not. And in fact, many times the most courageous individual will be a pacifist whose will you cannot break. And that's truly what we're looking at. We have to be courageous because of the circumstances. And really, I like Lao Tzu's thing, That is that only the loving can be courageous, only the content can be magnanimous, and only the humble can lead. And it's not true. I mean, other than the humble try and lead, but look how badly they do the job.
Yes.
But fundamentally, Lao Tzu was right on with that.
Well, it's the intent behind whatever effort you put forth, how it's going to turn out. It's without a doubt there. But you also quoted Gandhi, so do talk about that, because it is necessary, because there's parts of us that, of course, are going to, that fear button is going to be pushed even more by the powers that be, because that's one of their biggest weapons.
That is actually, I think, perhaps their only weapon, and they continue to devise new ways of using it, so to speak. So what they'll do is they'll use fear, and then they'll use fear to to fracture your personality, keep you in a specific state, and you get to the situation where their use of the fear language is let me put it this way: once you get to a state of fearlessness, and that is to say that you control your fear, you know about your fear, you allow it to exist, you own it. They don't. And once you own your fear, they have no more power over you. It really annoys them, too.
Isn't it lovely to annoy them? I think it's delicious.
But getting to fearlessness is not an easy task, and I think it is easier when you're older. It would be very easy, I think, as a young person in their 20s, to be distracted and in a constant state of fear these days, because we're in revolutionary times, and revolutionary times, as I say, are chaotically frothy, so to speak. And so there's lots of stuff, eye attractants and other things to intrude on your consciousness. So even though they won't do it, it's really important that younger people meditate and get an effective center around which to live their lives and go forward in the chaos here.
Well, you do have some very positive possibilities in this last report, anyway, of something coming about that will increase